Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Sports Lowdown right here on channel 98.9 FM. Brad Swanson and Lee Knapp bringing you the Sports Lowdown like we do each and every week. Lee, some interesting football games for the playoffs this past weekend, as a couple teams we thought were going to win and move on did, and a couple we thought were going to win and move on didn't.
Did not, right? Yeah, I was kind of surprised, Brad, and the only one that comes to the top of my mind is the prep game. Sounds like it was pretty much one-sided game.
Yeah, Thomas Jefferson came in to play Friday night, and they showed that they are a powerhouse, and they have been in the past, but the prep team was so strong in the last 3 years, three-time state champions, 3 years in a row. And then they faced a really good Thomas Jefferson team this past weekend and came up on the short end of a 28-13 game, which was closer than the final score shows. Thomas Jefferson scored late on a pretty long run, but I think that at that point in time, Cathedral Prep knew that the game was over. Yeah. And the season was over. And then, you look and you see Sherman took the hard knock by losing by 1 point. They lost 21-20. So those two teams are outdone. The two teams moving on are the ones that we thought from day one. Farrell and Wilmington just won pretty handily, both of them. The Wilmington game got a little closer later in the game. It was like 42-24 or something like that. But the reserves were in late in the game, and that's just the way they roll down there. Farrell just steamrolled through their quarterfinal game. So now you got semifinal state matchups coming up this weekend, and I like Farrell and Wilmington's chances of making it into the state finals.
It'd be interesting to see. We'll kind of keep an eye on it for this Friday night, and see what happens. Now,
north of the border, the I don't know if you want to call them the heart attack kids, or there's probably some folks that were gasping for air during that football game. The CSP, Clamor Sherman Panama team, back in the state finals in dramatic fashion as they beat Tioga, the team that they beat last year in the semifinals, and they earned a spot in the finals against Moriah, a team that they beat last year in the state finals. So, familiar foes. And really good football teams, both Tioga and Moriah.
But that game's in 2 weeks?
No, that's this Friday at noon at the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. So that will be the state championship game. And we wish them the best of luck, and we hope that they bring back another title. I think it's just a very unique thing. Having covered Clamor football for a few years doing the stats, I had the opportunity, as I mentioned in previous shows, and you and I have talked about it, had the opportunity to go up to Buffalo Stadium, which was Rich Stadium. It was, a few different names over the years. It's now New Era Stadium. But had the opportunity to go there and watch the Clamor Pirates in action and do the stats. And a lot of fun following those guys around. But it's pretty cool to see them play Panama during the regular season, play Sherman during the regular season, and now those three schools are combined, and the last few years they've done a tremendous job to put those kids all together and build a very strong program.
Yeah, they've been a pretty good powerhouse the last 3 years, and like we've mentioned in previous shows, Brad, that it's good because they get a bigger team, they got more to pick from. That's one disadvantage in my opinion. They get a lot more people to pick from. It's almost like prep being able to pay people to come to play for them. But they're not paying them. They just got a lot more to choose from. And sometimes I don't think that's really fair.
Well, in this situation, I think it's okay myself because it used to be, they were Class D. All three of those schools were in New York State. They go A, B, C, D, And then it became a double D, was the smallest, tiniest school, and that was Clymer, that was Sherman, and that was Panama. They were all in that division. And they would play D teams because there wasn't enough double D teams around the area to play. So they would play D teams such as Ellicottville, Franklinville. Now those two teams have merged, Ellicottville, Franklinville, and that's the team that they gave CSP their only loss this year. Also, there's schools around that have merged with other schools, and you're seeing it so much more now around New York State.
And I do understand why they do it. Don't get me wrong. I do understand why they have to do it in order for the kids to be able to play ball. Because you're right, some of the teams would not be able to field a team.
Well, here's a good example, Lee. Now that you just said that, one of the teams that has been dominant in New York State around this area for years and years and years is, now I'm going to forget the name of the team, but Jamestown, for instance, and Southwestern, great teams. Now those teams are still by themselves. Southwestern High School and Jamestown.
Right.
So and they're bigger schools, of course. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, Southwestern's a Class C team, and Jamestown's a Class A, and they always are. They usually make the playoffs every year and make a good run at the states. Maple Grove is the team that used to play against these three teams: Clymer, Sherman, Panama, and they were always dominant. Maple Grove was. Well, Maple Grove now has moved to 8-man or is it 7-man or 8-man football that they play in New York State? And I'm thinking that's crazy because they always had 3 times as many kids on the sidelines as they did on the field. They had 40 kids on their football team, and now they have the downsize to go to that.
Well, like we've talked many times, Brad, feeder programs. They got to have the feeder program to keep the numbers up. We got to keep the numbers up, or they're just going to have to, like you say, we're going to have to merge in order to keep even, having a chance to have these kids be able to play ball.
And that's true, too. And you see the baby boomer effect, or the opposite of the baby boomer effect, come into play over the years. I keep a close line of communication with the NFL Munchkin Flag Football League here in Corry, and I talk with Steve Savitz, and John Yatsko used to be involved with that. I would talk to those guys and ask them, what do the numbers look like, and they could give me an idea.
Right.
And then they will tell me, like, hey, I have 37 fourth graders this year, but not all of them will be moving up because 7 of those kids come from different areas. Because in the NFL Munchkin, they're allowed to come over from Clymer to play. Right. My grandson played the last few years over here in the NFL Munchkin League. But once they go to 5th and 6th grade, which I coach, they have to be in the Corry School District because it's a Corry recreation football program through the school district. So you have to be in our school district to play, which, I mean, I would love to have some of those kids. I would love to coach my grandson from Clymer over here. It would be fantastic. But, that's not going to happen. So, and that's just following the rules.
Yeah.
We're a school district that does that.
Now, do they have it in New York State, Munchkins?
They don't have the Munchkins, the NFL Munchkins, like we do here, but they do have little gritters. I believe that they start in 5th grade as well, tackle football over there. So they do have the opportunity for those kids to play. And I believe that they play in Sherman. So the kids from Clymer, kids from Panama, they can all go over. Ripley, all those schools around that area can go over and play in that youth football over there, which is good, I think it would be really cool sometime to set up a scrimmage with our kids from Corry and those kids, and maybe go to a neutral site like Clymer.
Yeah, there you go.
And go over and play. But we'll have to see about that. But you're absolutely right, Lee. You hit the nail on the head when you said all of these schools have to have a feeder program
Sure.
to keep things going, and not just there in New York State, but all over the country. You you need feeder programs for every sport to keep it going. We're seeing a great feeder program for our girls volleyball now. They have a really good feeder program going, and the girls are getting into that at a very young age. We're also seeing a feeder program with our trap team. You know, they have a youth trap team now, so I think that's fantastic. And of course, you always see it with the three traditional sports: football, basketball, and baseball.
Right.
Now you're getting also cross country and track and field involved too, and wrestling, of course. You know.
Well, swimming too.
Swimming, yeah. You have the otters.
So they're really combining that to get the feeder programs going.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great idea, and you're seeing a ton of youth soccer going on in the spring and fall.
Right.
So it's a great idea. I think it's great to get different people involved. You're getting different adults involved as well because they're going out and coaching. And some of them are out there to coach because their children play. Some of them are out there to coach because they love the sport. So my hat's off to everybody that volunteers to coach, whether they're parents or non-parents. And I certainly encourage a lot of people out there that if you played sports or just have a very good general knowledge of sports, if there's a certain sport that you love, if you're into swimming big time, go to the Y and volunteer some time and help out.
They always use the help.
And that's every sport. If you're into soccer, get out there and do that. And I would like to see more non-parent coaches out there just because
I would too.
They're non-biased.
Right.
And nothing, you know, like I said, my hat's off to all the moms and dads that go out and help coach by all means. But a lot of times they're either going to be too hard on their child or too soft.
Right.
And it's just a natural thing. I'm not knocking anybody, but that's something I fail to mention every weekly that I need to mention. That what our comments here on this show every week are just our views and opinions.
Right.
You know, we're basing this on the way we feel, the way we think. We're not, you know, going by the book and saying that we're 100% right on everything we're talking about, but we're voicing our opinion, and you know, we'd like to just let you know that, so that you know, I don't want to be in the grocery store and overhear somebody say, "I heard Lee Knapp and Brad Swanson say that they don't want moms and dads coaching." Yeah. That's not what we said. You know, we're just saying that we were encouraging more non-parents to coach sports because it gives you know, it gives mom and dad a break. For one thing, they can sit and enjoy and watch their children play.
You're right.
And then they're not going to be so hard on their child as a coach or soft on their child as a coach.
I know, Brad, I'm be the first to admit, when I was coaching, I was harder on my kids than I was on anybody else. Because you know their potential. And unfortunately, a lot of parents, myself included, wanted them to be better than what I was. And you push them to get to that point. And that's not always a good thing. Because I've seen, I'm going to say swimming, as for example, a lot of kids go do their best, and then they get tired of it. They get tired of being pushed. And they don't want to swim anymore. We had a couple good swimmers that I can think of right off the top of my head that didn't swim their junior and senior year. They got tired of it. They got tired of being pushed. And so that's not always a good thing. But encouragement is a big thing. Pushing is a bad thing.
I agree. I agree with you. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking of people too, myself, that I know at different sports that just didn't play anymore after, you know, 9th grade, after 10th, 11th.
Right.
You know, people were like, why did that person not come back out? They were really good. they got burnt out.
Yep.
They just had enough. And like you said, sometimes it's just because we as adults, we see the potential of kids, and we try to bring that out as much as we possibly can. I catch myself sometimes as a youth coach, especially, because you don't want to burn kids out. You don't want to make them not enjoy being out there, because after all, it's still a game.
Yeah. You got to remember that, and sometimes it's very hard to do that.
Yes. It's hard to keep that in check. One thing that I can throw out there that I was guilty of, my grandson wrestled, and he was 6 years old out there wrestling for the first time, and it was really tough to watch.
Oh, yeah.
As he was really hard on himself, and I'm thinking, geez, you're just learning how to do this. So I knew a little bit about wrestling. I followed wrestling forever, all the way through high school. I wrestled through 8th grade, and I didn't wrestle after that. But I had a lot of good friends that wrestled, and I went to all their matches, and I followed wrestling ever since, And I never thought about it, but here, this little guy's out there pushing it week after week after week after week, wrestling in big tournaments, novice tournaments, and he's wrestling 3-4 matches every weekend. Well, next thing you know, if he's wrestling 3 matches every weekend, and he wrestles for 10 weeks, that's 30 matches.
Yeah.
Well, 3 years later, after 3 years of that, he said, I really don't want to wrestle anymore. And as I thought about it later on, after the fact, he had wrestled over 150 matches in 3 years. And no wonder he didn't want to wrestle anymore. It was, just grueling. And every weekend he was somewhere and wrestling match after match after match. Sometimes he wouldn't get hardly any break at all, and he's back on the mat again.
Right.
And that's very difficult for a little kid. That's very difficult for high school kids, let alone little guys.
Yeah.
But last Friday I got a phone call, and it was my grandson. He said, guess what I'm doing? I said, what's that? He said, I'm wrestling. So he took a few years off, and he played basketball, and now he's back wrestling again. And he wrestles for Union City, but so I'll have to follow him, and then I have to follow my buddy Matt Petrilla for the Corry Beavers, and it'll be fun when Union City and Corry wrestle each other. But Marcus, my grandson, will be wrestling at the middle school level.
Right.
He had the option because he's a freshman, so he had the option of moving up to varsity or wrestling at the middle school level, and he said, I've been away from it for a while. I think I want to go the middle school route just to get reacclimated and get back into it. So it's good to see.
But I don't have a problem with kids doing that, Brad. Trying something different. They get burned out of one sport. I think it's very good that they try something different. Find out, okay, I'm all right at this sport, but I'm better at the sport that I just got out of. And then come back. Now, granted, it's hard to come back because right now he's 2 or 3 years, however long he took off, he's that far behind. But it gives him the drive to get caught up. And I think he'll do fine. He's going to have some rough matches, but he came back to something that he liked. He found out that the basketball wasn't his game. He enjoyed it at first and wanted to try something different. And I give him all the credit in the world for that. So I wish him all the luck, and I think he'll do fine. Once he gets back into the groove, he'll say, oh yeah, I remember this now, and what have you.
Yeah, and it's something that as a youth, it's easier to get back into than, say, you or I taking 10 years off or 15 years off, which
Right.
would be like him taking 3 years off now at our age, and it's really tough to get acclimated and get back into the swing of things.
Yep.
But and another thing you touched on, Lee, that I think is very important, and I like to share with everyone is trying a different sport, like you said, trying something different. It's very good for the kids, but also they're not sitting idle, not doing anything.
Correct.
Now, last week on the show, you made a good, valid point that it's very important to continue on and keep yourself active. Play 2 or 3 different sports throughout the course of the school year. Try something in the fall. Try a different sport in the winter. Try a different sport in the spring.
Right.
Try to stay active all along. And usually, in my opinion, I've even talked to Mike Vidishin, our trainer at the school, about this. I think that multi-sport athletes are less susceptible to injury because they're training different muscles.
Parts of their body.
Yeah,
I agree.
Different things.
I agree with that. I know, like I say, my own experiences. I'm more into the swimming aspect of it, but a lot of kids would come out for swimming just to keep their cardiovascular build up and to stretch their muscles out. Swimming, you stretch your muscles. Wrestling and basketball, you build your muscles. 2 completely different aspects of keeping them fit. So, yeah, in swimming, I know you want to get stretched out. And you don't see basketball players and wrestlers getting stretched out as much as they can. So you're right. You keep different aspects of your body in different shapes. Very true.
Well, Lee, we're going to take a commercial break and hear from our wonderful sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk something totally different about athletes and sports. And hopefully that will perk your interest and make you come back after these messages. Welcome back to the Sports Lowdown. Brad Swanson and Lee Knapp here, bringing you the Sports Lowdown like we do each and every week, right here on Channel 98.9 FM, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Lee, this week is a kind of a special week. It's a short week. We have Thanksgiving, of course, and everyone's gearing up, getting ready to go hunting as well. But before we get into that stuff, Thanksgiving's coming up. I did say that, right?
Yes.
So that means a lot of food. Speaking of food, it takes different food to fuel the system. And athletes have totally different diets. There's, what do we have? Girls and boys basketball. We have swimming. We have wrestling, participating in the winter sports.
Right.
And the basketball players are going to eat totally different than the wrestlers, and the wrestlers are going to eat totally different than the swimmers.
Yes. Yeah, I know from my own experiences in swimming, swimmers like the carbos. They like carbohydrates. They like the pastas and stuff like that because they can burn it off real quick and it gives them a lot of energy in a hurry. So I know the swimmer aspect of it, they're going to be loading up on carbos before the night before the meet. Give them all that energy for that day. Of course, they'll be bouncing off the walls at school when they go there, but that's what they need to do. Wrestlers and basketball players, Brad, you probably know more about that than I do as far as what they eat. I mean, I know wrestlers got to really watch their weight. So it'd be awful hard for them. I think that would be a hard diet.
Well, it's funny to watch wrestlers because you see these little guys that don't have to worry about their weight, and they're eating pizza. They're eating whatever you put in front of them. And, and then the heavier kids or the middleweights say that, let's just throw a number out there, and we'll say 145. The guy wrestling 145, and he's walking around at school at 144. That's tough.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't take a whole lot to go one pound over, or 2 pounds even, when you're working out at a steady rate. And these kids, they put a lot of really, talk about pouring the sweat out.
Yeah.
That wrestling room, there's a lot of sweat on the mat after a workout, and even at the little kids level. So, yeah, they have to really watch. I know that you see a lot of parents, even at the youth level, if they're trying to maintain a weight especially as they get closer to the postseason, you'll see a lot of kids eating yogurt and fruits. A lot of it.
A lot of protein.
So, yep, they're getting that protein in, still staying strong, but yet they're eating things that they can burn off quickly too.
Right.
So, they're constantly telling them to stay away from sugars. Don't be drinking pop. Drink vitamin water. Don't drink pop.
I'm sure
like
glad
that.
I never wrestled, Brett. I like my sweets.
Yeah. Well, they don't get a whole lot of sweets. The wrestlers don't. But back in the day when you and I were in school, Lee, do you remember the wrestlers chewing the Quench gum?
Yep.
I mean, these guys were chewing this god-awful. I tried it. It was terrible. It was called Quench gum, and it was like a lemon lime kind of flavor to it,
right.
But it was very strong.
I never had any.
And it made you salivate, and that was the key to it. Was they would chew that gum and then they would spit in in
the garbage
can or whatever, and just that saliva weight, it was keeping them from gaining any weight. So yeah,
I can't imagine that's good
stuff
for you.
No,
I can't.
There's been a lot of pros and cons about the wrestler's diet, because over the years, there's been a lot of people that have really suffered by not having a very good diet when they're doing that. So it's very important that the coaches, see to it that these guys are doing what they're supposed to do, and then the wrestlers themselves, as in high school especially, the high school kids, they'll kind of help each other out. If a guy's struggling, they'll help each other out, and say, hey, I've been doing this and it's working for me, try this.
So if they're wrestling 145 and they weigh 145 and a half, they cannot wrestle?
Right. Yep.
They have to be under that.
They have to be 145 or less.
Okay.
So, it's awful tough. I remember watching little guys in the youth programs running before a match to make weight, and to me, it's not worth it at that age.
Yeah.
When they're little like that, up to at least 12 years old, move them up, because the increments of weights at the youth level is 5 pounds. Now, that is kind of a strange thing, though, because say that you got a real little fella that's wrestling 45 pounds, and he's kind of hovering around 46, 47. You don't want to make a 45-pound kid lose weight.
No.
It's just not right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And there are people out there that actually do push kids to do that, and it just sickens me. I mean, I say move them up. Now, on the other side, I feel bad for the kid that weighs, he can't get below 46. He's staying right at 46 pounds. And he has to wrestle 50. 4 pounds
makes a difference.
At that age and weight is like 40 pounds to an adult. So you're losing a lot of, you're being put at a disadvantage because you're not as strong as that kid at 50. Most kids at 50. So,
well, I know, Brad, we went to a tournament one time. My grandson wrestled back in 5 or 6 years ago. Went to Youngsville for a tournament, and he registered at a certain weight, and he was 1/4 pound over, and they would not let him wrestle. So we went all the way, well, not all the way to Youngsville, but we went to Youngsville all ready for him to wrestle. He was all pumped up, ready to go, and he was 1/4 pound over, and they would not let him wrestle. And they gave him like a half hour to try to lose that 1/4 pound. And granted, his parents said, no, forget it. That's not good for you. So he didn't wrestle that day. We ended up coming home, and that was the last he wrestled. He said, that's enough of that.
Yeah, that's
so.
At the youth level, like I said, I really think that they need to monitor that stuff a little closer. I think that people in charge of each individual program should be really keeping a close eye on that. And if you're out there and you're pushing your son or daughter or other kids to lose weight when they're
nothing to them
7, 8, 9, 10 years old,
right?
That's terrible. That's
terrible. Not right. I agree.
If they're way overweight and you're trying to help them out a little bit, that's one thing. But still, you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
You know, you don't deprive them of food. You still feed them. You just feed them better food.
Right.
You know, things that are like cut the sugars out a little bit. You know,
it'll
things
come
like
down.
that.
It'll come down.
So it's just very important that you use your head. And there's so many people out there, Lee. And I'm not going to say that it's all parents, coaches, but there's so many people out there that coach youth sports that try to relive their youth or their, in, what do you want to call it? Their inability to be that superstar.
Well, they're going back to when they wrestled, and that might have been 30, 40 years ago, and things have changed. You know, maybe today there's a different way of losing that weight rather than starving yourself.
Right.
Because I can remember some of the kids at school wouldn't eat lunch because they had weigh-ins at 4 o'clock. So they wouldn't eat lunch. You know, and that's not good for you.
No.
You got to have that energy.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, a lot of people try to relive their days through the
kids.
Yeah, through the kids. And, you know, they had their day. They had their opportunity. And if they didn't do it right, they can teach a child how to do it right.
Right.
But you can't relive your past
your
because
dreams.
You had your opportunity.
Right.
You know? And if you didn't do it,
shame on you.
Yeah. At least now you know. And, you know, don't try to live through it vicariously through the eyes of a child.
Right.
This isn't going to work. Doesn't matter if it's academically or athletically.
You're right.
Not going to happen.
You are right.
That being said, we're not going to beat anybody up or anything for for this, but
like you said, it's all our own opinions on this, Brad.
Yeah. I think that youth sports is a wonderful thing, and we need to just keep it channeled, you know, in the right direction. Make sure that we're doing things the right way, and looking out first and foremost for the health and safety
right.
of the athletes.
Right. Not only that, Brad, and in all sports, unfortunately, you got to kids. Some of the kids today, they're not taught how to win, and they're not taught how to lose with respect. You know, if they lose, they come off and they start throwing things and they make all these excuses and stuff like that. And that really irks me, because when you're out there wrestling or swimming or whatever, you have control. You have control of what you do. So if you didn't, I know in swimming, I've seen kids get out of the pool and throw their cap, throw their goggles, because they're mad, because they lost. Well, obviously, somebody's faster than you. You know, you've got to learn how to lose, too. If you start getting mad like that, that's when you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. And you see it at every sport.
Yeah.
Where somebody, a youth at youth sports, where somebody will get mad and start throwing stuff around. And that's when it needs to be nipped right away. And, you know, for one thing, I always tell our kids when we go out of town, especially, it doesn't matter if it's at our field or if it's at General McLean, but you conduct yourself in an orderly fashion.
Right.
Whether you're walking out to the field or if you're, you know, walking from the parking lot, we go together as a team. You're not goofing around. You're going out there and you're going to play the game. And you're going to conduct yourself in a good manner because you're representing your school, your town, your family,
yourself.
Yeah, and your teammates here.
Yep.
So it's very important that you conduct yourself accordingly. And I've had to penalize a few kids over the years for not behaving themselves when we're somewhere else, or even for acting up at a high school football game and having teachers or administration people, you know, from the school district come and talk to me and say, hey, we had a couple of your players and they're running around with a orange or a black jersey on and they're acting up. They were doing this or that. And I find out who they were and we would take care of that problem and make sure that it didn't happen again. And it never did.
Well, I do know, Brad, for a fact that in high school sports, if you get thrown out of a game or out of a meet or whatever the case may be for unsportsmanlike conduct or unsporting conduct, that if you get thrown out, you're out for that meet, plus you are out for the next meet. So it's not worth it today to get out and throw your goggles and your cap in swimming and have the referee come up and say, oh, that was unsporting-like conduct, because now you're done for the rest of this meet and you're done for the next meet. And if that next meet would happen to be a championship meet or something like that, it doesn't matter. You're done. And I'm sure wrestling and basketball is the same. If you took a basketball and whipped that basketball, or take your headset off of wrestling and throw it, and you're done for the rest of that game and that meet, and you're done for the next one. I mean, because your name goes right to PIAA.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how basketball does it, but I know that if you were to do that in a wrestling match, like you said, throw your headgear off the mats off the wall or something,
right?
They penalize the team. I believe you lose, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll find out for sure. I believe you lose 3 team points for a disorderly or a unsportsmanlike penalty like that.
We'll find out also if they're done for the next match. Because I know a lot of teams.
Should be.
Yeah, I know a lot of teams. If you, like in swimming, if you get out of the 100 freestyle and you got beat and you throw it, you're disqualified from that event. You're disqualified from future events in that meet. You cannot swim, and you are done for the next meet.
And I think it's just punishment right there. It should be that way.
So
you're looking at high school football. You get kicked out of a high school football game, you cannot play the next game. And that includes coaches.
Right.
So I think it should be a general...
It may be.
It should be a general rule at every sport.
That's something we'll have to check into.
If that happens. Sometimes like in football, you hear, even at the professional level, all the way up through, you'll hear they had a sideline warning. Where the referees said, hey, they heard somebody over there saying something that was not appropriate, or whatever the case may be, and they tell them, hey, that's your warning. You don't get another warning, or it's a 15-yard unsportsmanlike, and the coach, could be removed from the game.
A lot of times they don't give them a warning in some sports. I mean, they're supposed to know about it in advance. So.
Right. Then baseball. Look at baseball. They're not going to give you that warning.
No.
You say the wrong thing,
you're done.
Yep,
you're gone.
You're removed from the field. And I've seen people before. I've seen games stop where that coach had to leave the premises, where they made them leave. Well, they weren't allowed to be there anymore.
No, he said something bad.
Right. So, it's and it should never come to that. I mean,
it's a game.
I understand that people in the heat of a battle get excited and say some things out of context. But if you're at the high school level or lower, you should never lose control that much, because you're there setting an example for your players.
Right.
So, it's hard to do at times because of the situation. But that's another thing that over the years, as I get older, it's easier for me. But I've told myself, and now I share it with my assistant coaches and coaches around the entire league. I even tell at league meeting, I'll tell this story. I say, I've caught myself before where I had to catch my thoughts and think, don't ever forget about the age of the kids that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Keep that in check, always. And it goes to the high school level as well. You have 18-year-old or less kids out there they're still impressionable.
Yeah,
You know,
you're right.
if you want them to go through and continue on in sports and maybe come back and be a coach themselves because they're gifted people, you want to definitely teach them the right way.
You're right. I agree.
I tell you what, Lee, we're breezing through here, and we did want to come back and touch on the Thanksgiving holiday. We certainly wish all of our listeners a safe and enjoyable holiday.
Yep.
We want you to sit back and pig out on Thanksgiving. You know, it's that one day you can go out and just hammer that food. Eat as much as you want and sit back, take a nap, and just make sure that when you take the nap that it's before the football game starts, and make sure somebody wakes you up. But no, seriously, we want to wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving holiday. We want to wish all the hunters that are going to be going out to the woods a very safe outing.
And good luck.
We wish you the best of luck. It's going to be a little strange starting hunting season on a Saturday. We could get into a whole different ball game there, but we'd be here till midnight once you and I got going on that one. But I just hope that everybody's safe out there. I hope that Mother Nature can wave her magic wand and sprinkle a little bit of that white stuff on the ground, just enough
to cover.
Enough where we older folks can see a little better.
We can track if we have to.
Right.
You're right.
But Black Friday's coming up. Ladies, be careful out there. Everyone be careful. Make sure you're watching, because people get in a big uproar and everybody's trying to get to this store, get to that store, and it's chaotic.
Be careful on the roads.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
You're right.
Another thing too is keep in mind, as you just said that, Lee, be careful on the roads. Remember that New York State is still hunting. So if you cut through New York State to get to Erie or whatever, you're over in that area, be careful and watch. 2 Saturdays ago, I went over to Clymer on a Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning, and a huge buck come running across the road right about the speed limit sign where it says, 30-mile-an-hour speed limit ahead or whatever, going into Clymer. So right there, a huge buck came running across the road. So be careful, watch for deer, and
pig out.
Yeah, make sure that you
I like it.
Make sure you eat a lot of turkey and all the fixings that go with it. But keep in mind too, it's a day of thanks. So share with your family what you're thankful for. We're thankful that we're able to be able to do this sports show every week with you, and we're able to enjoy high school sports and the athletes, and we can go on a little bit about that too. We could get into a lot of stuff. We're foremost though, we're thankful for our wonderful families, and we'd like to share that with everybody, and we hope that everybody else is on the same page.
I agree. Well,
that's going to do it for this week's show, Lee. Once again, we thank all of our listeners, and like we said, have a safe and enjoyable holiday. Be careful if you're going out to the woods, and we will be back here next Wednesday, 6 p.m. for the Sports Lowdown. For Lee Knapp, this is Brad Swanson, and as we always say,
Go
Beavers.
And happy Thanksgiving.
Yep, and hey, go CSP. Go get another state title.
Yes, I agree.
All right, that'll do it for tonight's show. Take care.